Eugene Curran Kelly was born on August 23, 1912, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was the third of 5 children born to James Patrick Kelly, a phonograph salesman of Irish-Canadian descent, and Harriet Curran, who was of German and Irish ancestry. The Kelly household was bustling with energy, intellect, and fierce independence. James Kelly worked hard to provide for the family, while Harriet, a lover of the arts, dreamed of a more cultured future for her children. Though times were often tough in the industrial city, the Kellys remained closely knit. Pittsburgh's grime and grit helped shape Gene's rugged masculinity and working-class resilience, traits that would set him apart from the more refined figures of Hollywood's golden era. Harriet's insistence on cultural refinement led Gene and his siblings to take piano lessons and eventually dance classes. Gene, however, wasn't immediately smitten. He was athletic, more interested in sports than pliés and porte-bras, but circumstances would shift his direction. It was during the Great Depression that Gene truly began to see the economic potential in performing. As money grew scarce, the family leaned into what little advantages they had. The Kelly children began performing locally under the name The 5 Kellys, showcasing their collective talents at amateur contests and church gatherings. Gene eventually attended the University of Pittsburgh, majoring in economics, and later enrolled at the University of Pittsburgh Law School. But as tuition bills mounted and dance continued to draw him in, Gene left law behind to pursue what had once seemed improbable. He turned professional as a dance instructor at his mother's studio and developed an interest in choreography. He would never look back. In 1938, with dreams stretching further than the 3 rivers, he packed his bags and moved to New York. He took classes from top instructors and started getting ensemble roles on Broadway. His charisma didn't go unnoticed for long. Kelly's Broadway break came in 1938 with a small role in Cole Porter's Leave It to Me. 2 years later, he landed the lead in Rodgers and Hart's Pal Joey. His performance was electric, a mix of virile athleticism and polished grace. Hollywood noticed. In 1941, he signed with MGM, and by 1942, he was starring opposite Judy Garland in For Me and My Gal. Audiences were captivated. From the very beginning, Gene brought a new energy to musicals. He rejected the notion that dance belonged to the elite. His movement felt streetwise and grounded, with a bounce that mirrored his upbringing. He made tap and ballet feel natural on tenement stairs or rain-slicked pavements. The mid-1940s through the 1950s saw Gene's ascent to the summit of screen stardom. His role in Anchors Away, 1945, dancing alongside an animated Jerry Mouse, was whimsical and ground-breaking. In On the Town, 1949, co-directed with Stanley Donen, Gene took the musical into real New York streets, breaking the studio-bound format. But it was Singin' in the Rain, 1952, that would become his enduring triumph. His performance, singing and dancing through a downpour with carefree abandon, remains etched in cinematic memory. The sequence wasn't merely dance. It was rapture. He choreographed it meticulously down to the splash patterns. He was feverish during filming, running a temperature above 100 degrees, but never once let it interrupt his joy on screen. Kelly's style married athleticism with elegance. He celebrated the working man, the athlete, the lover, and the soldier. While Fred Astaire glided, Gene leaped. He wasn't about tuxedos and top hats. He was about sweatshirts and sailor caps, making dance feel like a natural expression of real life. In 1941, Gene married actress Betsy Blair. Their union lasted over a decade and produced one daughter, Carrie. Blair, a politically active actress, was blacklisted during the Red Scare, straining their marriage. Though he initially tried to protect her career behind the scenes, the relationship eventually buckled under the weight of tension, both private and professional. After divorcing Blair in 1957, Gene later married Jan Coyne, a dancer who had worked with him on multiple projects. They had 2 children, Bridget and Timothy. Jeanne's untimely death from leukemia in 1973 left Jean devastated. Though he maintained a composed public image, friends noticed a marked shift in his spirit after her passing. Later in life, Kelly married Patricia Ward, a writer and researcher 47 years his junior. Their relationship raised eyebrows, but Kelly often said that he appreciated having someone who understood both the artistic and historical weight of his life's work. Patricia acted as a steward of his legacy during his final years. Not content with just performing, Kelly pushed boundaries behind the camera. He co-directed On the Town and Singin' in the Rain, later helming Invitation to the Dance, 1956, a dialogue-free film where storytelling unfolded entirely through movement. Though the project didn't perform well commercially, it revealed Jean's deep commitment to the artistic potential of dance. By the 1960s, the musical genre was in decline, and younger audiences gravitated toward rock and roll and edgier cinema. Kelly transitioned to directing more conventional fare such as Hello, Dolly, 1969, starring Barbra Streisand. While not as celebrated as his earlier work, the film earned Oscar nominations and proved Jean's adaptability. Television also gave him space to continue performing. He hosted The Gene Kelly Show, danced on variety specials, and lent his voice to documentaries and retrospectives. In 1985, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Film Institute. But rather than dwell on honors, Kelly focused on teaching, choreography, and preserving the craft he had helped elevate. As age crept in, Gene's body, once so supple and unstoppable, began to betray him. Hip surgeries, arthritis, and strokes slowed his stride. Still, he remained mentally agile, giving interviews and mentoring younger dancers well into his 70s. A stroke in 1994 left him partially debilitated, and he suffered another in 1996. Despite these challenges, he refused a public farewell tour or ceremonial goodbyes. He disliked nostalgia for its own sake. He wanted people to remember the work, not the decline. Those close to him recall his final years as quiet but reflective. He often watched classic films, rarely his own, and spent long hours reading or listening to old jazz recordings. He preferred solitude, but welcomed visits from his children and close friends. He declined funerary fanfare and public memorials, insisting his remains be cremated and that no service be held. He was, in the end, a private man who had spent his life under bright lights. On February 2, 1996, Gene Kelly died at his home in Beverly Hills, California, following complications from a series of strokes. He was 83. There were no televised tributes, no floral-drenched procession. In accordance with his wishes, there was no funeral, no memorial concert, no posthumous showbiz send-off. Just a darkened stage and the distant echoes of tapping shoes. His ashes were not scattered with fanfare, but given quietly to family. As he had lived, fiercely devoted to his craft and wary of false sentiment, so he departed, asking for remembrance through motion, not mourning. Gene Kelly changed the way dance was seen in American cinema. He didn't invent screen choreography, but he turned it into something every kid on a stoop could dream of doing. He made it approachable without making it mundane. His performances were thrilling, not because they were hard to replicate, but because they felt like they belonged in your world, too. He refused to let dance be highbrow. He didn't soften his masculinity to dance. He let dance sharpen it. His wide-legged stances, grounded weight, and explosive turns showed strength in every line. Even his smiles were calculated, sometimes warm, sometimes teasing, sometimes utterly focused. He showed that grace could come with grit. In a world obsessed with neat categories, Kelly sprawled across many. He was a star, but also a choreographer, a director, but also a teacher, a romantic, but also a realist. He adored classical music, revered the French ballet tradition, yet loved jazz and baseball just as much. He moved between these worlds without apology. Gene Kelly's imprint remains visible, though not always cited. Any time a dancer in sneakers leaps through a subway platform or a film uses rain as a metaphor for release, Kelly's legacy drips quietly through the frame. He influenced generations of performers, or from Michael Jackson to Justin Timberlake, from Broadway to TikTok. Not because they copied his steps, but because he demonstrated that dance could be rooted in real life, in dirty shoes and rolled-up sleeves. He didn't seek sainthood. He made mistakes, carried grudges, battled insecurities. He demanded perfection and could be difficult. But his flaws, like his footwork, were always part of the larger rhythm.